Hour. Looks like I'm still muted on there. Oh, now I'm here. Hello and welcome to HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Peter Thomas Fornatal back with you, coming to you from the Monmouth Park Library. This is a special room, folks. I was going over there. I was looking at old stud books from 1897. Very, very cool. Some neat dusties. A view of the paddock out the right-hand window. Very, very good stuff. Super psyched to be here for HorsePlayer Happy Hour today, and then sticking around for this sunset Friday of racing here at Monmouth Park. But to join me for all of it, a man I had the pleasure of doing one broadcast with already today as we did our dive into this ongoing Pick 6 at Belmont with its big fat carryover. I'm talking about the man from his own eponymous podcast I've had the pleasure of working with for a number of years in podcasts, videocasts, you name it. TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, Pete. I like the background. Fun fact, little aside, that's where we had production meetings during the HorsePlayers show. And when I say production meetings, it was genuinely just us showing up and finding out where we needed to go. But I have fond memories of that room from many, many moons ago now. But I love the look of it. It's a very, very fun room back there.
It kind of looks like a fake background, which I like. I feel similarly about the bunker background at this point. It looks like it could be made up. But so you were here with the cast of HorsePlayers. Does that mean, Matt, if I get hungry at any point and I look hard enough, I might find a jar of algae somewhere?
I have no comment. I can't say one way or the other. Maybe there's some rocks laying around that you can rejigger and get them all set. But yeah, you may find some remnants of us when we were leaving our mark out there.
We'll take all the help we can get. Let's do we're going to set things up. So HorsePlayers Happy Hour. If you're new to us, this for me, it's the best deal in contests. It's a very different type of contest. It's season long. We are about a little more than a third of the way through. Still time for anybody to jump in and get a shot at these 2 additional Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats. One goes to the overall winner on the tour. Another goes to the winner of our playoffs. Every week, we're qualifying people for the playoffs. How do you do that? Well, 2 ways. You can finish in the top 2 in any week's event, or you can be one of the top tour finishers who doesn't get in directly. That's going to be fun as we get to the end. That'll be essentially an 80-person tournament for a $10,000 prize. And oh, by the way, you didn't have to pay anything for it. It's just added to the prize pot by our friends at the Breeders' Cup, and we play it out right here on HorsePlayers Happy Hour. To join us, you go to horseplayers.com and sign up. Our new day in time, it's now 3:15-ish on Fridays. We're going to be getting to our first contest event in a minute. The contests themselves are another way you can win into the BCBC through the typical feeding process. And I know this is a cause that means something to you, Matt. All the proceeds go to charity.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about it in the past, and no secret, I've had some success with the BCBC, but it was all going toward charitable aftercare sort of foundations. But the idea that, without the horses, these contests don't happen. We don't get to enjoy, giant offerings like the 2-day Pick 6 carryover that we've got going on at Belmont Park. Again, no disrespect to the horsemen and women out there or the gamblers. I mean, look, we are all an important piece to this entire ecosystem, but when push comes to shove, you don't have any horses, you don't have a game. So we got to make sure we take care of them.
And the proceeds each week go to our friends over at the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. The TAA does the important work of accrediting the various aftercare organizations. The TRF means everything to us. They're the founding partner on the In the Money Media Network. We have our own link to donate with them. You can go to trfinc.org/players. And for the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance and their important mission, it's tbaftercare.com. We can go a little telethon here and encourage people to donate above and beyond what they give by participating in these contests. The other thing, and we've been doing this more and more as the weeks have gone on, and I'm loving it, we want this to be interactive. We're going to give our picks on these races. We want to hear what you have to say. If you have any questions about racing action last week, things going on this weekend, hit us up in the comments. However you're watching this, we want to hear from you. We want to feature you on the show. We want to give you shout outs. We want you to be a part of the show. So keep that in mind as well. I want to throw this to a pre-recorded segment that we did. We're far enough along in this HorsePlayer Happy Hour tour that we have a leader who who is definitely worth featuring. I had the pleasure of doing a little pre-interview with David Browning earlier in the week. Really enjoyed our conversation. For this week and this interview, we had Naomi Tukker. Naomi, somebody who folks are going to know from Talk Racing to Me, her own podcast on our network, and they may have seen her doing a fantastic job as part of the Breeders' Cup team with the international runners last year. Hopefully, she'll have a chance to be involved again, and she's certainly somebody who appreciates the contest world, and hopefully a face we'll be seeing more and more of on these broadcasts. So I'm going to now throw it to Naomi Tukker for her chat with David Browning.
Thank you so much, Pete. Indeed, I'm so happy to be joined by David Browning, who's leading the tour by quite a bit, 300 points, 120 clear of the runner-up, Bruce Murray. Now, first things first, David, how are you doing and where are you broadcasting from at present?
I'm in my house in Lexington, Kentucky.
I love Lexington, so it's wonderful to hear. Is that where you are normally based?
Yes, I've been here about 30 years.
Oh my God, that is wonderful. Well, let's dive into it straight away. I'd love to hear a little bit about your history. How did you get into horse racing and then specifically handicapping?
Well, growing up, I've always loved numbers and sports. So I think as a child, I learned to count by watching football and basketball and keeping track of the scores. So numbers has always been important to me. And in high school, no matter if my friends and I played golf or went bowling, we were always gambling. Maybe just a quarter, but we were gambling. So at that time, I knew about the Derby and Keeneland, but I didn't know anything about handicapping. Then when I graduated college, it's when I moved to Lexington in 1990. And of course, we have Keeneland, we had daily simulcasting. So those couple things with my love of numbers and gambling just all meshed together and took off from there.
And was there anyone that introduced you to the track life? Did anyone take you there, or did you just venture out with your friends in general?
Some new co-workers when I moved up here started working. They were into horse racing, and then, like I said, I knew about it, so I kind of ventured out on my own along with them.
And so, were you playing at the track, or what is sort of your ammo? What did you prefer doing?
Back in those days, it's long ago. Track was pretty much all. We didn't have TVG or anything like that, so go to the track live or go make bets and go home and look the next day in the newspaper to see who won.
Oh my God.
Kind of no much internet and stuff back then.
I can't even imagine what that must be like, that you actually have to wait for the newspapers to come out, that you can't watch any replays. I mean, yeah. It's so different right now, isn't it?
Yes, it definitely is. I'm still old fashioned. I like my pen and paper. I don't do a lot of computer programs, but.
Oh, let's talk a little bit about that. Old fashioned pen and paper. Does that mean you go to drf.com, print out your PPs and kind of get to work, or how do you start?
Usually a Brisnet's what I usually most, or if I go to the track, I pick up a program. It's usually the Racing Form, but just pick those up. I will watch some race replays on big days like Derby or Breeders' Cup, but mainly I just like the PPs in my hand and just kind of picture the race. There's a lot of front runners, or is it, so pick a closer. If there's a lone speed, go that direction. And I love maiden races, especially maiden on the turf. Just trying to figure out the pedigrees and stuff like that.
So how are you figuring out the pedigrees if you're just at the track? Would you look them up? Do you bring a computer, or how do you do that? Memory.
Just certain horses I remember on the track, themselves as when they were running, or just some offsprings that I'm familiar with and so forth like that.
Wow, that's quite incredible. And how did you end up playing in tournaments? I mean, that's not something everyone ends up migrating to after betting frequently at the track, but you clearly did, and with success.
I think I don't know how long ago it was, 15, 20 years ago. Jim Goodman, who at Keeneland, who most people know, during the wintertime, he has a small $25 contest on Friday nights. So that's where it all got started, was with going to the track and playing those. Then when HorsePlayers and horse tourneys started, then I'm a frequent visitor there.
And what do you prefer in terms of your strategy as well as tournament setup? What do you feel like is your strength in terms of playing these tournaments?
I like to pick and pray, where it's a $2 winning place. You do it ahead of time. The live tournaments, I mean, if you get behind, people just start taking big stabs and not really handicapping at the end. So I prefer pick and pray, and that way it's kind of an even field. If you like a long shot, you pick him, of course, but you don't have someone at the end just picking a bomb to try to beat you.
So with those pick and prays, is it your strategy to kind of go, specifically with the horses you like, which could sometimes mean a fair few favorites, or do you try to balance it out with some longer shots as well?
Really depends on if I've got one entry, then I kind of just go with what I like, just to mix and match. With the happy hour we're doing, $20, I play the three, max tickets. So those are just kind of a combination.
And of course, this HorsePlayers Happy Hour tour might allow you to get a seat in the BCBC. And at present, you are leading. So, your chances are vastly increasing. We still have a fair few weeks to go, but
Right.
How much would it mean to you if you did end up getting one of those seats?
Oh, it'd be huge. I told Pete earlier, I don't have the bankroll or capital just to pay the $10,000 entry fee. So I was fortunate enough to play in it last year, and I've done that by winning a $56 feeder. So I've been to Vegas several times in the NHC and the World Series, but all those are $20 or $30 feeders. I just don't have that capital to pay the big entry fee. So having the $7,500 to actually bet with is just awesome when you're not used to having that kind of money to play with.
And what is it like to play against these high rolling gamblers? That must be kind of an experience.
Yeah, the first time I went to the NHC, I spent the whole first day just looking around, here's so-and-so, here's so-and-so, people I've listened to on all your all's podcasts and so forth. I was just kind of in awe, I guess, of who I was playing with.
Well, David, thank you so much for your time. And I wish you best of luck. We still have a couple of weeks to go. Are we feeling confident?
Well, I told Pete I wish the interview was in the fall after it was over. So if it's a jinx, I'm blaming him. But hopefully we can keep it going.
I hope we haven't jinxed you. Thank you so much again, David. And back to you, Pete.
There we have it from David Browning. That was great. I'm just so tickled, Matt, that this was sort of the scenario we envisioned when we put this together. The chance for a player who's not a high roller to be able to compete in a tour fashion with some of the biggest names in the business. And I love that story he told about looking around the room and seeing the various competitors. And I just love the fact that somebody who's obviously a dyed-in-the-wool horse player, somebody who loves it, can hang in there with those types and test his mettle. And so far, he's passing the test.
I would say so. I mean, he's setting quite a rapid pace out there early on, and hopefully he can hang around. I can empathize with that whole scenario. First time out in Vegas, kind of taking it all in with an event like the NHC and even the BCBC, where, especially when it's a threshold that you're not used to playing at. I'm very much in the same camp as David. I'm not someone who is going to sit there and just plop down 10 grand to get involved. I want to try to feed my way in. That's how I qualified last year. Hopefully it'll be the same way this year. But that idea of, okay, well, it's one thing when you're typically betting $20 or $50, or maybe you're feeling frisky and you're going to go out to 100. It's another when those numbers and denominations are times 10. That makes you rethink things a little bit more, and you say, this is legitimate cash. And that's honestly, I can't speak for David. I don't know how he approached it. But for me, at the end of the BCBC last year, I knew I wasn't in contention to win. I just wanted to recoup some of the money, knowing that I basically got in on a free roll, and I was fortunate enough to do that. So I left it saying, you know what? I didn't necessarily give it my best sort of go as far as being in contention was concerned, but I was still walking out with a chunk of change.
It doesn't have to be a ride or die situation in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. I mean, if you want to talk about expected value and where the money is, I get in theory how it makes plenty of sense for JK and Marshall Graham to put down 40 and 80 or whatever it was, the numbers that they did on Monomoy Girl last year. I totally get it. But for other people for whom the money might mean something a little bit more day in, day out, you can go in there. You can look to lay up for an NHC seat. You can look to qualify in and then essentially take your $20 you start right here with on a Friday afternoon and turn that into $10,000 or $5,000 or $15,000 or whatever it is. Just bet within the context of the contest and walk away with money. That's one of the reasons I love the BCBC. One of the reasons why I encourage people who want to get involved to look at all the various on-track feeders you can find over at breederscup.com, or try to qualify right here on horseplayers.com. Let's talk about this race at Gulfstream, Matt. I think we're getting ready.
They are loading into the gate.
Oh, loading. Give us a quick thought. Who do you like in here?
I like the one, Union Gap. I thought it was an interesting move, a nice enough race. We've got back-to-back victories. First off, the claim, 7-2 down on the inside. I don't think there's any superstar in this race, and I think the price is fair. So 7-2 on the one, Union Gap for me.
I'll give a quick shout on the 7, and producer AJ, if you want to go ahead and switch it to that feed. Yeah, we'll watch the race right here on the feed. Matt's with the 1. I'm with the 7. Let us know who you like in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Give a shout out straight away to Nathan Kosinski. Great to have you joining us for the chat. It makes me wonder if you're related to Jerzy Kosinski, one of my favorite authors, but I know that's more of a common name than that. But anyway, I'm just throwing it out there, being there. Anyway. Looks like my horse has cleared. I didn't realize I was bet into 2-1. That's not an exciting price, but
I'll tell you what, though, I don't think you could have drawn up an easier lead.
No, that's right. And at this point, if there was in-race wagering, it would be quite a bit shorter. Actually, very surprising. You don't see that too often when a horse bounces out to the lead and goes up in price, ticks up to 5-2 there. Being chased in earnest by One Turn Johnny, who looks to have some horse, 22-4 for the opening quarter there. We'll see what this one has left. Your one starting to run on from the back of the pack. A lot to do, but definitely has a bit of a head of steam.
Yeah, got a little bit bottled up there. Is definitely coming with a run, maybe too little too late. But this was a legitimate pace for this level. And I say that the one is cooking right now.
Yeah, you're doing well. If it's a good rail, especially. Oh, you got to get through. Had to switch out. Still coming, though. That was a nice job by the jock on your 1 to not have that be game, set, match. Looks the 7 has emptied out all over the stretch. And Union Gap is going to win by a gap of about 2 lengths back to the 2. Nice pick, Matt. Your good streak on these HorsePlayer Happy Hour shows continues.
Yeah, it's nice when things work out. To be honest, I didn't think he'd be coming from that far back, but I did think we'd be coming from a little bit farther off the pace. And again, y'all have to factor that in. We talked about it a few weeks ago. Maybe the pace when you first see the fraction, you go 6 furlongs at Gulfstream. That's not that fast. Well, you need to consider the condition that we're dealing with beating $6,250 claimers. For them, that was a legitimate early pace, and I think that's why you saw the race more or less fall apart.
Indeed, but a creditable run, and again with a situation in the stretch that could have been a problem. But that's one of those funny things where it looks like trouble, but then when it gets managed that deftly, I'm not going to be like in a hurry to upgrade the winner the next time, even though you'd have to say there was a little bit of trouble getting a run. We've just got 2 minutes to post now out for Belmont's 6th race in the midst of this pick 6. You had on our podcast before. I think you gave out the first winner on top. I think I gave out the second winner on top. So hopefully a lot of listeners are alive and well. For folks who are just coming across us, we are both part of the In the Money Media Network. You can get all manner of podcast content at our website, inthemoneypodcast.com. And we've also got a YouTube channel, which Matt Bernier pretty much single-handedly invented by himself. But we've taken the bit and run with it. And now we have nearly daily content on there. So if you're interested, if you like our act and you want to get more from us, you've got our YouTube channel and you've got inthemoneypodcast.com, or you can subscribe to the In the Money Media Network pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. Matt, let's recap your thoughts on this 6th race at Belmont.
So I'm down to just my mains. If you listen to the podcast from earlier this morning about the pick 6, I only have the 5 and the 10 in the actual pick. My top selection, though, if we were going that route and from a contest standpoint, I would go with the 5 Holy Breeze for Jeremiah Englehart. I mentioned it earlier. Jeremiah doesn't have them ready to go first out of the box on turf. Over the past 3 years, first-time starter on grass, 1 for 31, and only 6 of them hit the board. So not something that he typically does. I think a little bit of added ground, and the horse ran well enough on debut to make me think that there is a little bit of something here. And the price is right. I'm looking at 6-1 right now. I certainly think that Holy Breeze is in with the chance. I respect the horse that you like, and I'll let you talk all about the 10. I'm curious also, not only just your thoughts, obviously, about the outside runner, but Marvelous Maud is taking money. Is this legitimate money or is this Chad Brown money?
Yeah, we got to take another look at that. I think it could be a little bit by default, given the question marks around some of these runners. I mean, this was a funny one where between the two of us, we did have one common horse, but in our original reckoning of the race, I think I mentioned 3 and you mentioned 3, and there was only the one common one. I think when you get in that situation, it could be making the Chad Brown runner look a little bit more appealing by default. But you and I both had some nice things to say about the 10 Crisa La Rote. Could get a good trip on the stretch out. And based on the blood, the stretch out should suit. Curious why this one hasn't gone long yet, but just seemed like the trip was going to be so good. I wanted to give a try. Less appealing at the 5-2 she just ticked down to for contest purposes, where obviously in these handicapping contests, very often it's not just, you're not going to pick the horse you like regardless of price. There's a huge difference between a 5-2 shot and a 6-1 shot. It makes me want to look a little bit longer at yours.
Yeah, and again, I don't know that there's really a massive difference between a horse like Holy Breeze and the Crisa horse on the outside, Crisa La Rote, simply because Crisa La Rote has a few runs under her belt at this point. Well, and I say her, yeah, it is a 3-year-old filly. While Holy Breeze, I'm going to expect some sort of a forward move with sort of the education under the belt already. I acknowledge that my backups are out now because you saved my bacon in that last race by using the horse who wired going 6 furlongs. But the backup for me would have been Epona's Dream, the 9, who is 6-1 right now, taking I think a little bit of money here into the teeth of a Chad Firster, into those 2 horses who we've already acknowledged. I just thought of the horses coming out of that maiden special on May 15th. I thought Epona's Dream, especially with the scratch of the horse you liked, Akushla. I just thought Epona's Dream had kind of the worst of the run, got bounced around a few times and still showed some interest. That was first off of a few-month layoff. Maybe we get a forward move here. So I'm afraid of this one. I'd be disappointed if I got bounced by her, but at the same time, I think she makes a little bit of sense.
Couple of shout-outs. Tom Espinoza likes number 2 in this spot on the front. And we've heard from Horse Tickets, who's interested in the 3, mentions that the Dam won debut easily, win early. Also, they're deeper in the pedigree. Grass is a question mark, but is that the Chad Brown runner we were chatting about a moment ago?
Yes, Marvelous Maud, the 3.
Hey, shout out to Tim Schramm. Great to have him joining us. Extremely popular with players for the fantastic job he does year in, year out at the BCBC. He mentions that there's a good show of players today. We always like to see that. We'll do a leaderboard update at some point. Lainey Friedman checks in and mentions, I guess she's watching from Delaware Park. That's cool. We love to see that as well as they get ready to pop from the gates here at Belmont. Lots of ideas. We'll see how it plays out on the track. That call about the 2 going to the lead looks correct, at least in the first furlong.
Yeah, and you had alluded to that earlier as well, that this was a horse who really, in a race that seemed more or less void of speed, was one who could probably get out there and maybe get a little bit brave. I like the position right now for the 5 Holy Breeze, tucked down on the inside. Just kind of follow that 2 for as long as you possibly can. Chad's Firster broke a little bit slowly, but based on the pedigree, you see Slumber on top, and as JD has alluded to, maybe we've got a little bit of stamina as far as the Dam is concerned as well. First out of the box, we'll find out what kind of effort we get from that one first out.
If I bet the 3, I'd be yelling, "Go faster!" at the screen right now, because it could, this is the critical part where it sort of could go either way. Are the jocks gonna say, "Hey, Comset's gonna come back to the group and sit chilly," or are they gonna attack and push this half? Half comes back in 47-16. Comset certainly has a fair chance from here, and it could be getting late early for the closers. We'll see. It's now or never time, though.
I think it's getting late for everyone right now, honestly.
We'll see if Comset, the horse is traveling very well, very much in hand.
Creasy's got a chance.
Yeah, still has to find, and looks to be facing a very serious challenge here from the 8. We'll see if there's any digging in, but Just Okay is not okay, has seized the lead, and the closers, while they're coming, I don't think they're coming fast enough. No. I think we're looking at an 8-2-3.
8-2. Todd Pletcher. Second time off the bench, third time starter, daughter of English Channel. Hey, you're going to get a nice price. So far, this has not been an easy sequence. I think I'm hopeful we didn't say it outright earlier when we recorded the pod, but I mean, this was no cupcake of a pick six.
No, not easy. A lot of races where you could go 5 different ways, which then it just comes down to sort of strategy and how you're going to build your tickets. I don't recommend over spreading in these kind of situations. You gotta decide where you want to take your stand. And this was one, again, utterly logical and a good price, but not one that I was looking to press, and ends up running out a pretty nice winner here.
But I mean, you figure I'll have to take a look and see what the pick 3 is going to pay. But I mean, you've got 2 $16 horses to kick things off, along with an $8 horse who was the controlling speed. But I mean, again, I would have to assume this pick 3 for $1's got to be north of 100. No.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And it could pretend. I mean, it feels like it's gonna get hit, but it feels like it's if you were one of the people who's smart enough to be around still, you're sitting on a ticket at this point. I think it's safe to say.
I would have to think. I mean, again, with those first 3 legs kind of playing out the way that they have, and knowing that these next 3, especially if you can beat a horse like Shamrocket, who we talked about, who is, I think, going to probably be the favorite in there. I don't know how heavy. Maybe kind of a sneaky one where, if you like the horse just outright to bet to win, you may actually get a better price than maybe you would first think. Just simply coming out of a grade 1, you would expect the horse to be absolutely hammered. I have a funny feeling you're probably going to get close to that 8 to 5, maybe even a little bit higher than that, because some of the other horses that we talked about, I think, offer some appeal. But if you beat that horse, I mean, who knows? I mean, this thing could be very intriguing.
I was seeing some other chatter in that leg you're talking about, Matt, about the 2 that we liked. So I'm wondering if it's just a dream. The big prices on the 3 and the 9 against Shamrocket a little bit later. If there's some fixed odds people watching, feel free to take a look at what that market's looking like. Let us know in the chat what the principles in the market are, and then the 3 and the 9, both horses that we like there. I guess we have a few minutes here, Matt. You're a monitor list today, so.
We have quite a bit of time. I think our next race is Gulfstream's 5th. I could be wrong. That's still 20 minutes away. So we've got time. By the way, my guesstimate on the $1 pick 3, not even close. For $1, my mental math, it's just a shade under 350.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, if you're alive, you're in pretty good shape right now.
Yeah, start crossing those fingers and toes and seeing if you can get yourself home in this spot. So when this race goes official, we'll do a leaderboard, but we'll wait for that race to go official before we pop that in there. We've got a fan of horse has chimed in. I love it. Triple H and Italy, Turkey, and the Euros all live on the computer. Fire extinguisher ready. I have to admit, Matt, if I'd realized that it was the start of the Euros today and that Italy were playing at 2:30, if the Azzurri were playing at 2:30 and I realized that, I would have said we got to go earlier or we got to go later. I haven't missed an Italy match in a major competition. I don't do that lightly. There is a big TV here in the library, but I'm worried if I go over there and start touching things that a fire alarm's going to go off. Brian Skirka's going to come up here looking real mad. I'm not playing that game. I'm gonna chill and check on my phone and hopefully get some good news. I mean, they're playing all 3 of their group stage matches in Rome. If they don't go through, I'm gonna have to say that would be a national disgrace.
Yeah, I think especially with the past year that everyone has dealt with, I think the hope is rather high for the home side, and I say the home side. That's where obviously all the like you said, the group matches are. If they were for whatever reason to lay a bit of an egg, probably wouldn't go over well.
What do you ever bet soccer? I mean, I know you follow the game, but how plugged into it have you been as a gambling game?
So I'm actually in the midst. I have in this monitor in front of me, out of the 3 that I've got set up, I have my MLS model up. Now, they've been off for a little while with the national team when they played Mexico there a couple days ago. Tweaking this basically to use it as a template to get ready for the new season starting in the Premier League in August. But I'm cautiously optimistic. I think there's an interesting thing, not to go down a rabbit hole. I find that the models that I've put together with let's say the fewer goals scored, thinking of soccer, hockey, even baseball to an extent, they are wildly different than a basketball model or even a football model, just simply because I think the value of each point, goal, whatever you want to call them, run, is so much more important in these games. So one, especially I think of hockey just all the time now, that's top of mind. One goal is effectively on average a sixth of the scoring. That's a pretty massive departure from a 10 or 15 point run in an NBA game where you're expecting them to score 225, 230 points.
It's a great point, and it's something you got to think about, that difference between, and I think it's interesting in the lower scoring sports too, the idea of looking at judging other more advanced metrics about expected. I know there's ways now. I mean, it's beyond my ken how they do it, but this idea of being able to look at like expected goals in a sport like world football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, or hockey, that can give you a whole other perspective. And feel free, if you don't enjoy the other sports chatter, tell us to stick to racing. This is the one case where I tell you I will not be offended if you just throw in the comments, stick to racing, and feel free to ask us questions too about racing, whatever you want, whether it's about the Breeders' Cup World Championships coming up, tournament play in general. I really believe firmly that contests are an incredible growth area for the sport, part of our mission. And this just goes back, this isn't anything anybody's paying us for. It's just what I believe, that more people playing in handicapping contests, betting competitions, whatever you want to call them, it's just an unmitigated good for the sport. So feel free to ask us whatever you got. But while I have Matt, and he's obviously thought about these some of these other sports betting things, I'll go down that rabbit hole a little bit longer until you viewers pull me out. But I'm interested. It's always fun to come up with an angle. The last good angle I had betting soccer was the World Cup. Gosh, was it the last World Cup or was it 2 World Cups ago? That's how doozy bots my brain is. When they introduced VAR, that was sure. my best soccer betting angle ever, was using that introduction. Like at first, they didn't change any of the pricing, and I found like with help of associates around the world, you could get propositions like betting against a goalless draw. And they didn't correct the price right away. And sure enough, throughout that tournament, I think I bet that every match, and I think there was 1 goalless draw, and there would have been 5 if it hadn't been for the video replay and turning things around. I mean, trying to come up with something unique and interesting. I feel like it's very hard to have much of an edge in most pre-game sports betting, but it's just too much fun to have a bet and try. If I'd gotten here a little bit earlier, I would have wandered over to the Monmouth Sportsbook and made some wager on Italy. Not that I have plenty invested just as a fan. One of the few teams that I'll still get up or down about based on a result, even if I don't have money. But hey, then at least if they win, I'd have some money to buy drinks later.
Hey, look, and that's never a bad thing. To your point though, I had to do a video earlier for NBC Sports Edge about the semifinals in the NHL. And we talked about there's a massive, massive price discrepancy between the Golden Knights and the Canadiens, and deservedly so. I mean, Montreal's coming out of the North, which, AKA Canada, which has been, I would say, considerably weaker than the other 3 divisions throughout the season. And that's not even factoring in the fact that Toronto just fell on their face in the first round. Meanwhile, Vegas is coming out of, or taking arguably the most difficult path to this point, where they had to go through Minnesota, they were no slouch. I mean, that was a legitimate squad that I think in any other division could have been viewed anyway as a legitimate threat. And then they had to get through Colorado. So we were talking about the price discrepancy. Right now, I believe some of the prices out there for Vegas to win the series is in the ballpark of minus 450. I mean, they are a massive, massive favorite. So how do you, if you think that's how it's going to go, how do you find some sort of value? Because I'm certainly not going to recommend you lay 450 to try to win 100 out of it. My view is try to actually key in on, if you like Vegas, how many games is it going to take for them to win? Are they going to sweep 4-0? And that's the beauty of sports. You can find those sort of exact prices in those exact scenarios. Is it going to be a 4-0 sweep? Is it going to be 4-1? And factor that in. And the beautiful thing, not just I put my stuff together, but there are models out there that you can buy or gain access to kind of play around with, and you can figure out the probability of how likely is it that these series go X amount of games and try to exploit the value there. I brought up, and I know you're, an Islanders fan, and yes, they beat my Bruins, and It is. It's an
I
unfortunate.
wasn't going to mention it. I wasn't going to bring it up.
It's an unfortunate situation, but I said to you earlier, and I said it on that video, I'm done underestimating the Islanders. They've taken down some big squads in Pittsburgh and Boston. And yes, Tampa kind of fits right into that mold, maybe even a little bit more so because they are the defending Cup champions and they're sort of battle hardened. But I kind of look at that series and I'm not going to sit here and make a prediction, but I could very easily see it going 7 games. And then you get into the idea of, and I won't name the book, but you can find the price for these 7 games for the series at like plus 325, or you can play either the Islanders or the Lightning to win in 7 games at plus 750 each. So we're splitting hairs, but you actually have a little bit more value betting both sides to win in 7 games respectively, as opposed to just betting the series to go 7 games. It's effectively the same bet, but you're getting a little bit better as far as the price is concerned. So I think those are the sort of things that if you're really diving into the sports betting aspect, you got to find any kind of little edge that you can. And I think that's a way to exploit some numbers.
100%. I think that's a great idea. Anytime you can chisel, it's chiseling. Don't get me wrong, sure. But it's, you got to chisel if you want to hang in there, in my opinion, with sports betting, where, you just have to be right an overwhelming amount of time. It's one of the reasons why I prefer horse betting in the big picture of life is you don't have to, get stuck with the daily proposition of laying 11 to win 10. You can have these major scores. We have a bunch of comments coming in. Let's roll through those. And then I think we should do a little leaderboard check. Matt, I'll also ask you, how many did we end up with today in the contest? We'll go through some comments and then I'll come back to you for that. But, so we have here we go. We've got a football avatar, world football avatar here. Yep. You do see those, all kinds of interesting prop bets. And I think for me, one of the really interesting bets in soccer, and all sports really, is in game. But I feel like soccer, world football, more than most, you can, I don't know, this could just be me reaching, but I feel like my ability to read the game and have a sense of when there's going to be an extended feeling out process at the early part of the game, I feel like I can tell that sometimes. And then you can do tricky little things in the over-under markets, right? Where you can back the under expecting there to be 20 minutes of goalless stuff. And then you can go the other way and make it so that you win either side and then wait for the goals to come. Like, there's a lot of ideas that, I'm not saying I'm no expert. I'm not saying I'm going to make my living that way, but I enjoy messing around and just trying to do that for a little bit of fun. You ever messed around with the in-game soccer?
Absolutely. And you can take it even a step further than that, where just think of, and I won't get into the details of trying to middle games, where you hit, like you say, you can basically hit everything. But the idea of, I think back to the NFL, or just college football or whatever it may be, but more specifically the NFL, with a team that you feel, and I know as difficult as it is to bet the NFL because those teams are just so, even, 1 to 32, they really aren't separated by that much in the grand scheme of things. If you get a team that comes out a little bit sluggish, I think back to the Chiefs. It happened a couple times to them last year, where they would spot a team 7-10 points, and you could get a slight swing in the odds in game where maybe going into it, I'm not even going to put numbers out there, but they were a prohibitive favorite. And now that they're down 10 early on, well, the number has swung a little bit, and maybe you're still taking a little bit of a haircut, but it's a much more reasonable and respectable number. That's a great opportunity to get involved because, in all likelihood, they're going to come back. They're going to sort of, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, regress to the mean or move back to the mean. Everyone is going to kind of come back to level. If KC, if you believe they were, some sort of 10 or 14 point in reality favorite, never mind what the actual spread itself was concerned, and they were down 10, who cares? That they're going to come back. And this other team who may be playing a little bit, let's say, not advantageous, but taking advantage of situations, maybe there's a fumble down in the inside of their territory or whatever the case may be, and they take advantage and score early on. Well, in all likelihood, that's not going to continue. You got to kind of try to play the law of averages. And if that's the case, I think you can find some value in the midst of the in-game betting.
Some of the best wagers I've ever made are under that exact circumstance. And I couldn't agree more. Let's see. Jody is here. Good to see us again today. Looking for a site to get UK odds. Probably the easiest one would be like an aggregation site like Odds Checker. If you go to oddschecker.com, you can probably grab the info you're looking for. Fan of Horse says that betting the draw with closely matched teams can be an overlay. I would agree with that. And, I think the more popular the team, probably the better off you are, simply because, betting the draw is not sexy. It's I'm not saying you can get an edge just doing that, but if you did it selectively and with the right teams, especially, public, what would be called public type teams by people who actually know more about sports betting than me. There's so much fan money that even with the pro gambler money involved, it makes absolute sense to me that you could do that. Do you agree with that idea, Matt?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a good way for us also to transition. I was looking at the Gulfstream minutes to post. We actually have 5 until the opener at Santa Anita. So we can roll into that. And it's fun because there are a couple of names that tie into our sort of, human athletes and our human sports in this race. But
I like
the bigger thing for me, to your point, the public sort of steam, you can really exploit that, especially in playoff series. I'll just go back to the most recent round in the NHL between Colorado and Vegas. After game 2, when Colorado was up 2-0, I believe the live wagering as far as the series odds were concerned, Colorado was, I believe, minus 1,000 and Vegas was 6-1. And if you had watched game 2, you would have realized that Vegas was, I don't want to say unlucky, but they very easily could have won that game. And I think so many people just weighted that series a little bit out of whack because of game 1, where Vegas lost 7-1. Keep in mind, they had their backup goaltender in net and Robin Lanier. And in the grand scheme of things, those two teams, they split all of their regular season games. Colorado wasn't so far superior. And I'm sure some people took advantage of that when you had that 6-1 offered, knowing that they were going back to Vegas for game 3.
Okay, let's talk about this race at Santa Anita. I'm super boring, Matt, so I'm hoping you have something more creative than the 6-5 favorite. But I just feel like this bet on Mookie makes all the sense in the world after the promising debut when bet. Coming back here, getting on to the turf, which the pedigree says should be no problem for connections who win in bunches. But where do you want to go in here?
So Bet on Mookie is one of the sports names in this one. The other one, and the one that I was...
First, you're bringing up the Islanders beating the Bruins, and now the Boston guy is telling the Mets guy about Bet on Mookie. Unless you were talking Mookie Betts, but my brain goes straight to 1986.
No, I was thinking of Mookie Betts. So not Mookie Wilson, Mookie Betts.
Sorry.
But thank you for... Luckily, I wasn't around for it. I'm aware of what happened, but, thank you for that. I was going to go to the other sports sort of oriented name here. The number 5 is owned by Eric Johnson, defenseman for the Colorado Avalanche, and his teammate is Nathan MacKinnon, who is one of the finalists for the league MVP. This horse is named MacKinnon. Typically, he tries to name horses after his teammates that are going to be quite good. This one debuted going 4.5 on the dirt. It's the son of American Pharaoh. They paid a boatload of cash. Now we move over to the turf out of a Scat Daddy mare. The runner-up in that most recent run came back and broke the maiden next out with a 65 buyer. And I don't argue that the 7 is the horse to beat, but I think just strictly from a percentage and probability standpoint, I think the price on the 5 is fairer than the 6-5 on the 7. So I'm going to go with the 5, MacKinnon.
What a sexy pedigree on this beast.
Yeah.
American Pharaoh out of a Scat Daddy. Damn, feels like one that would be at home next week at Royal Ascot. So maybe you're right on the blood. 3-1 against this crew looks pretty good.
Has a connection to each of the 2 most recent Triple Crown winners.
Yeah, I mean that's that definitely counts for something. That's an interesting runner, and that's a good point about the names. Eric, I haven't met him, but I know he's an associate of our colleague over at In the Money Media, Billy Koch, who does the Owner's Box show and does a fantastic job on there. If you have any interest in horse ownership, or just if you're a gambler who wants to understand how owners think and why they end up in the spots that they do, check out the Owner's Box with Billy Koch and Michelle Yu. Great stuff. Let us know out here in the comments who who you're interested in betting in this spot. We've got Chris Couples chiming in that we've nailed the logical ones, but also has a little bit of a shout for the 8 based on works and looking at 11-1. Hey, didn't we just talk about her? Is that Michelle out there at the gate? Yes. She looks like, she's getting ready to rob a bank in disguise with the hat and the mask, but I'd recognize her anywhere. Good stuff. As we have 0 minutes now, we'll run through a couple other things. James mentions great to see Woodbine back, loaded looking cards, lots of racing Saturday and Sunday, hoping we can do a little bit of a little bit of making up for lost time. We were talking about in running betting before. Fan of horse, imagine 5-inning betting in horse racing, leader at 4 furlongs pays. I've heard that idea floated, and it does exist in the betting exchange world, where there's a very popular wager. You have to do it manually, but essentially it's called back to lay. So if you know a horse that's going to be looking good as they turn in, you bet that horse pre-race or in the very early stages of the race. And then when it goes like super short odds on, you essentially bet against that horse. Once again, to talk about what we were saying before, locking in a profit. I mean, these are some of the exciting fixed odds betting exchange type ideas that, who knows, maybe introduced in this country before too long, but certainly some exciting ways of looking at the world. Ooh, we have a good question from Nathan. We're going to save that one till after the race. And I a little bit of a host fail. I never got to that leaderboard update. I guess we'll let this next array of races go. Did you notice how many we have playing today, though, Matt, by chance?
167. So we have 16 folks are going to qualify for tomorrow's BCBC qualifier. You got about 5 folks who are going to get some breakage out of the whole thing. But, as we've talked about in the past, top 10 are going to get the points toward the year-long point standings, and the top 2 will automatically qualify for the postseason.
Naomi had David Browning on before. He's got 300 points on the tour. That's the equivalent of 3 wins. The 7 here just breaking like an absolute
it
shot.
would look like me and Mary last weekend.
Yeah. Just absolutely getting out there and getting to the lead. But as we've talked about before, just because he has that lead, I mean, it's still catchable. You've got 8 scores to catch him, and I should know the exact number, and I don't. But whatever it is, 15 more weeks, or maybe that's high. Anyway, we'll come back with a schedule next week and show you just all the opportunities you have. So McKinnon was looming boldly, as it were, but Bet on Mookie has re-engaged and looks to me to have put this thing to bed, unless something very surprising happens here.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless this 2 comes with a run, I think the 7's getting a little bit goofy, but I think Bet on Mookie is a home run, if you will.
I like it. And we've got McKinnon, who will be a winner next out. I'm going to take a wild guess.
Probably so. Yeah, first time on the weeds, maybe just getting a feel for it. So all things considered, decent effort from the top 2, especially Bet on Mookie. Not to quickly pivot, but 0 minutes to post at Gulfstream.
Let's do it.
I think we're just going to roll right into all of these, because then Belmont's only got 5 minutes too.
That's great. We'll have one more pause to refresh where we can get back to questions and do the leaderboard and all that. But let's talk about some racing with 0 minutes at Gulfstream. We've got an even money here in the 5. Matt, what did you come up with?
I thought the 2 Starry Hope was interesting. Broke the maiden most recently, rallying from off the pace. I don't look at this field and think that you've got, absolute world beaters, especially at this level. I have such a hard time buying in to a 4-5 or an even money shot. I would rather take a chance on a horse who, look, it took a little while for her to figure things out. She was 0 for her first 7, but then broke through in a pretty big way last time out. Doesn't have to come from 100 out of it, but has a nice late turn of foot. I wanted to give the 2 a little bit of a shot here at 7-1.
I'm going to go with the 3, Blues Song. Very interesting, I thought. Just a guess here, but ran well enough, I thought, in a race that's produced some pretty good form, and I was expecting would be a square price. So a couple of interesting alternatives there in the upper single digits as opposed to the 5, who I agree that certainly makes sense, but isn't one I necessarily want to get stuck into at even money. Let us know real quick if you're betting this race. Who do you have in this sucker?
This is one of those races too, Pete, where if we're being honest, are folks betting the 5 because she's so much faster? Like, because that's based on figs, she really doesn't even have a massive edge.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by the betting enthusiasm. I mean, the favorite makes sense, I suppose, on, the basics of the form, but sure seems overbet. Hopefully we didn't just put the 5 in the winner's circle and one of our 2, you're on the 2, I'm on the 3, can get involved. Of course, we're not showing much speed early, but it does look like it's a party up there in the lead, as Pete Aiello would say. Maybe we can be okay here.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated to see how some of these races are bet. And again, a horse like Corded, who, I'm not arguing the fact that she is among the contenders, but I fail to see why she is so much more heavily bet than some of the other fillies in this race, because on paper, she doesn't seem to have any discernible edge.
Did backflash to 9-5 for whatever that's worth, and looks like is getting a very nice trip in behind this trio of long shots up on the lead. I don't mind where you are one bit, Matt. You might be able to. I mean, it's we'll see what happens with the trip on the favorite, but you could see trouble emerging from a couple of different spots out there. Meanwhile, unfortunately, I'm not sure what's going on with my 3, but with the pace being what it is, going to take a minor miracle for me to even make the frame at this point. You're under pressure, but you are advancing. What do you think? You think you got a shot here to keep this sustained run going?
Yeah. Oddly enough, at this level, I'm okay looking like I'm all out with a half mile to go, because I just want the momentum to get going. Maybe she can't hang on, but I wouldn't trade places with anybody right now.
You got the jump, that's for sure, but the 5 got the dream run through, and then the 1 gets maybe an even dreamier run through. It's looking like the 1 is going to prevail. So we were right in our suspicion about the 5 at a short number. Let's see what happens for second here.
Very close.
Looked like I had a little video hitching, but it looked
maybe
like
the 4.
Oh, you think the 4 got there?
It's very, very close.
Okay. I had some weird video hitching, so I'm not qualified to say. That's so interesting. The 1 ended up going off the favorite in the end. So somebody did all right there, plunging late and galloping out an hour ahead of the field with that. And it wasn't the greatest setup in the world. I think the 1 was just much the best.
Yeah, and that's one of those where and we only have 1 minute to post till Belmont. I don't feel bad, that my field couldn't quite get there. I think it's the right idea. I'm more concerned, and I think we talked about it last week. I'm more concerned with the process than necessarily the result. Obviously, you'd like to win. Winning is better than losing. But I like, if you put yourself in the positions to succeed, ultimately it's going to end up wearing out.
It's actually a lot like we were talking about before in the low-scoring games with the goals and the idea of expected goals isn't really any different than expected value. Now, depending on what your goals are as a horse racing fan, you may or may not need to worry about trying to get expected value on every single horse you play and every single wager, et cetera, et cetera. That's a podcast for another time. But I mean, the way that I like to phrase it is the importance of focusing on the decision that you make, not the outcome that you get. And the analogy I've been using lately is, let me know what you think of that basketball player's shot when it hits its apex and before it starts coming down. If it was a good shot then, it was a good shot. It doesn't matter if it clanks off the rim.
Yeah, and that's how I am with golf. I need to be stop being so results-oriented and be content with the process that you put into play.
Let's give a quick pick here in this Belmont race. I went with the 2 Slam Dunk. Who did you like, Matt?
Yeah, you and I both on the 2 here. Slam Dunk. I did go 3 deep in here. I used the other Shug on the outside, who took the lion's share of the money. I also used the Ray Handel horse. I couldn't help but think, when the other Handel horse scratched, the old racing adage, why run 2 when 1 will do?
I love that one. I absolutely love that one.
We'll see. But to be honest, I would not trade places with anyone right now where we are.
No, Slam Dunk appears to have control of things up front. Timely Tradition close in the picks. I was 2-4-7, and that seems to be not a terrible place to be. I don't mind it when I have the 2 who are up front. I also don't mind having the one who's last when they're not too far back. Just feels like there's a lot of ways to win.
Keep an eye on Slam Dunk when she hits the top of the lane. Now, I don't know if she's got anything left in the tank, but she got a little goofy in her last run, swapped leads momentarily, and then she righted the course. But she was chasing a really good filly. Don't Call Me Mary is blitz to the front, but I think on the outside, here comes the other shug trying to get involved.
Yeah, getting a little wheel spinning. I think this one is All She Wrote. Don't Call Me Mary. Going to score it at 7-2.
Todd
and
again.
It looks like he's having a nice day, and it looks like it's going to come 5-7 in second and third. Hopefully, some of you out there had that. Another. It's an interesting little pick six where we've seen a few of these results where it's like, yeah, I get it, but just not the one that I sided with. Sort of a testament to how hard it can be to hit these longer pick bets day in, day out.
Yeah, I believe, if I'm looking correctly, we still are yet to have a favorite win through 4 legs. And to your point, I wouldn't sit there. I certainly didn't have the horse. I didn't have her anywhere in my top 3. But I don't look at her and go, how did she win?
Right. I wouldn't have, right. It's not a, how the heck did that win? It's not a, if you could bet against horse that I would have taken on.
Right.
It was just a horse was like, okay, yeah, that's a horse that I wasn't smart enough to come up with.
You got to make decisions, especially in these, that's why I kind of talked about it in the podcast. I fall into the bad habit with the longer sequences of saying, well, this one makes sense and this one makes sense and this, that, and the other. And next thing I know, I've got a $5,000 ticket and I go, well, that ain't going to work.
Yeah,
we gotta cut around. So that's typically why I try to stick to doubles, things like that, where I can just press up 1, maybe 2 horses and say, if I'm right, we can then parlay that down the road. But it adds up very quickly when you add more legs to it.
No doubt about it. We're going to wait for this Belmont race to be official. And this time I won't forget, we'll go promptly right to the leaderboard. Meanwhile, we do have some other comments. We have an update on the soccer. Italy clearly dominated, but not scoring. Same old story. Indeed, you don't need to remind me. Looks like 0-0 in the 53rd. So we'll see what happens there. With the ridiculously favorable draw that they have, it is not really a huge deal to draw, but it's kind of also a waste. But I'm not gonna cry in my red wine over it.
It's one of those things I think of like the NCAA tournament where, you get those early round games with a 1 or 2 seed that, at halftime, it's a 4 or 5 point game and you're going, what are we doing here? It's okay. We're going to be able to eventually prevail. You'd rather not even get to that point, but you'd like to think at that point still class will prevail, as opposed to you may not be able to get away with that as you get a little bit deeper into the thing. Yeah,
Italy, this is their MO going back. I'm not joking. Before you were born, the slow starts in these big international competitions. Here was that good question from Nathan we had before. And I love the question, asking about domestic spending versus bricks and mortar. How good is domestic spending? I think we've talked about that on the show a little bit before, that he definitely has a bit of a bricks and mortar 2.0 look. The race was run to suit, but he looked so good the other day. I can't say that that's hyperbolic. What do you think the ceiling is for this horse?
No, look, it was one of those things where I knew in my heart of hearts, I'm going back to last Saturday. I was at Mohegan Sun doing an event and I'm watching it and I'm seeing Tribhuvan, who's open by 5. And I go, well, nobody else is really picking their feet up.
Great pick, by the way.
Nobody's really picking their feet up, but then you see this horse just unleash his late kick. And I had somebody comment on my pod from earlier this week talking about how I'm a stickler with lead changes. And they said, oh, well, see, it doesn't always work out that way because domestic spending popped to his left at the end. And to be fair, you're right. It doesn't always work out that way. I do think back to Bricks and Mortar, though, who did much of the same, where he was a little bit on the goofy side. I think his had a lot more to do with prior injuries than domestic spendings does. Having said that, I think as a general rule of thumb, you want to pay attention to the mechanics. But didn't that happen after the race was put to bed? It's not like he flipped wrong when the race was still being run in anger. There's a difference, isn't there? Well, and even if it's in the midst of, the heat of the battle, I think there are those unique circumstances. Gun Runner is the one that always comes to mind for me, where it didn't matter. He was just an exceptional racehorse. I think we said it right after the race was over watching it. I genuinely think this horse is on Bricks and Mortar's caliber, on his par. I don't know what path you really want to take with him going forward. I've heard, I believe Howard Kravitz had mentioned that there's a possibility of the Mr. D, which was formerly the Arlington Million. To be honest with you, and I know Chad had kicked the tires on it with Newspaper of Record. I know I'm going way, way down. Why? I feel like this horse is as good as any to try to send over there. No? To Europe? I mean, now maybe I'm wrong. You know the European form a heck of a lot better than I do.
I think the horse would fit, but I don't think he'll do it. I mean, I think Chad will go to ask it, but he hasn't, or he hasn't. He went maybe once years ago when Ken Ramsey dragged him. And I don't think it was like the most positive experience. And I think he'll need another owner to drag him. And I don't think Klarovich will be that owner. I think Klarovich just trusts Chad implicitly and wants Chad to do Chad things. And he'll face the Euros as a home game when they come over here for the Breeders' Cup. Believe me, as a fan, I'd love to see it. I think he'd fit, but my gut very strongly tells me that it's just not going to happen because it's not his MO. I think, he'll maybe have an E5 horse at some point, or an owner who just says, look, this is really what I want to do. I think Seth Klarman has shown in his partnership with Chad, he just trusts him implicitly, and I just don't see him making that move on his own,
No, I tend to agree with you. I just, when I look at the horse from a talent standpoint, it just seems so, for lack of a better word, obvious that he is an exceptional talent. I mean, he put the boots to what I think is the best turf field we've seen this year, and he did it relatively easily. I would like to think that this horse has as good a chance as any if they wanted to be ambitious and try to take on. To me, it's almost that's a separator. If you can send a horse over to England or wherever else, France or wherever, and you can win over there. I think it's why Tepin's win was it the Queen Anne, I believe, was as I think meaningful as it was, because we don't see it work our way. We usually see it work the other way around, where they come over and do what they did in the Justa game and run 1-2. We don't usually get to see our American-based horses go over and have success. And I feel like this would be one of those horses. Is it what's the 1.25 mile race about a month or so from now?
The Eclipse?
Is that what it is?
At Sandown?
Maybe so. I think of there's a 10 furlong race that it comes to mind, because I'm also wondering too, as we look toward the Breeders' Cup, do you look at Domestic Spending as a proper 12 furlong kind of horse? Because he's very much in that same mold of Bricks and Mortar, and Chad was certainly able to get him out to 12, but I think a mile is sharp, and 12, I wonder if that kick is dulled a little bit.
It's interesting. I would trust Chad implicitly, though, especially after the Bricks and Mortar situation, where he just seemed like the prototypical horse stuck between a mile and a mile and a half. And what's interesting is my gut was, I wouldn't trust Domestic Spending in a mile. I probably would have trusted Bricks and Mortar. Yes. So I just based on that, if he shows up doing that, I don't think you have to worry. I think he's going to stay home. He's going to beat up on that division, and he'll go out there a mostly fresh horse, and it should be very interesting. Here's actually another one from Michael about I'm not fully 100% sure I get the question, Michael, but if he's saying, would I take 10-1 on Domestic Spending to win at the Breeders' Cup? 10-1 seems big. 10-1 feels big from here. I mean, not having looked at the market, not having any idea who's coming over. If there's 4 Euros who come over, maybe it'll be 10-1 on the day. But doesn't he feel like a horse that's going to go there and be 9-2 at the worst? So 10 sounds okay for a horse we both think is a contender.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just assume he takes a very similar path to the one that Bricks and Mortar did, which was the Arlington Million, and then I believe he just sat out until the Breeders' Cup. Let's say he goes and does what we would assume he's going to do. Bricks and Mortar, I think, was 2-1, and that was against some pretty salty horses. I believe Anthony Van Dyke came over and ran in that Breeders' Cup turf. So if he was 2-1 in there, to be honest, I mean, you would know more about horses who seem fit for 1.5 mile a Breeders' Cup kind of run over very, very, let's call it firm going at Del Mar. I would think he's probably in that 2-1 kind of range. So yeah, I guess right now Sure, I would take 10-1, but it's so difficult to know when you don't really know what the picture looks like.
Yeah, if you've seen that price out there, let me know. I think I know some people in England and Ireland who might need to get on their phones.
Yeah.
Here we go. Italy on the
There you
board. 1-0. We'll take it. That's good stuff.
My buddies and I, we genuinely laughed out loud the other day when we saw Gigi Buffon is still in net for Juventus, right?
7,000 years old,
Yeah.
and still good. I mean,
he was
really,
older. He was older when we were playing FIFA when
Yeah.
we were in college.
Yeah.
And then I looked up and I said, "Wait, how's he's still doing it?"
No, he's like Tom Brady. You're a young
Yeah.
you're a young whippersnapper at this point. They might be similar ages. I have to look that up because they start so young in soccer and they can advance so quickly. It's really an amazing game. Let's take a look at this leaderboard for the first time today. Apologies, we haven't gotten to it sooner. So we've got Derek Vogt in top with 50-20. Looks like all to play for here with 3 races to go. Not the highest scores in the world. Robert Little, 46. Bill Chenvert in an enviable position with 44.80. Interestingly, he is same, the next 3. So he's going to do very well or not. But, he has a chance to do something pretty special here at the top of the leaderboard. Pete Dressens from your neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. I imagine he's still mourning the Bruins as well and bristled. He really bristled when I mentioned Mookie Wilson, I bet. 41.60. Ramon Calzadias, 38.70. Jorge Palsa, 38.70. David Brownfield, not to be confused with David Browning, 37.40. Mike Samich, good to see him up there, 36.20. William Bemmer, 31.90. Mike Gillum, and also in the 31.90 club, Bruce Meyer, who's doing very well on the tour himself. So that's one to follow the rest of the way today. And longer the rest, but good to see some very familiar names up there on the leaderboard as we have 3 races to go. And I think it'll be the same thing, right? Little pause to refresh here and then bang, bang, bang to wrap us up.
Yes, I think they're all probably within, let's say, 4 to 5 minutes of each other. So we'll have a nice time right now where we can chop up some random stuff. I want to kind of position this to you. What was the thing that stood out to you, if anything, from last weekend at Belmont?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it was ridiculously exciting. I mean, I was incredibly impressed with that stretch run in the big race. I mean, it really, I've said this elsewhere, but it gave me Curlin Rags to Riches vibes. And it was just exciting to see because the talk had already started, and I can't blame the talk based on what we'd seen, but you'd already heard some of this. And maybe it's not going to be the best 3-year-old crop kind of talk. And after that race, I think people have to take another look at it because those 2 ran a serious speed figure. I'm in that camp that did feel like, it depends on exactly where they show up, etc. But if I was just evaluating the Belmont Stakes on its own, I was of the Hot Rod Charlie, probably ran the better race and maybe more than probably for me, as pace oriented as I am. And I kept going back and forth on, I think it was an unusual track. It certainly wasn't a good rail. It's possible at the points of the track Hot Rod Charlie was on the rail that it wasn't as bad as at other points. But I mean, if you want to give him the double upgrade for being on the wrong part of the track and the pace, I mean, he might just be a freak. And I came out of it wanting more and hoping, like, I get it. It makes total sense that they'd want to run at home, and a race like the Pacific Classic could be there for the taking, but I'm hoping it goes another way and they end up both together in the gates for the Midsummer Derby, the Travers. I'd be super excited to see the rematch because I think in the modern game, especially where horses don't run that often, to have had the 3 exciting clashes so far, this is a legit rivalry, and I want to see how it plays out.
And somebody had tweeted it, and I apologize, I'm not going to be able to give credit to whoever it's due to, but I remember coming out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile thinking, how good could it have been? You had a couple of just 1,000,000-to-1 shots, kind of clunk up and get a piece. And that race has been as key and formful at predicting what the 3-year-olds were going to do really as anything that I can remember in the last handful of years. I mean, the horses who ran well that day at Keeneland, maybe with the exception of Keep Me in Mind, and he hasn't even run terribly, but I mean, he just hasn't. He hasn't necessarily, run up to the level of the others. I mean, it's been a spectacular race so far, and I'm with you. I was so taken by the performance of both of the top 2, Hot Rod Charlie for the reasons you alluded to, but that was my thing, my big takeaway. Because I remember I had some folks chirping away in the comments for my podcast, and I saw some stuff on Twitter about the group, they're average, they're mediocre. I don't know how you can sit here and say that now. I mean, this is the fastest Belmont from not just the winner, but the top two in 10 years and the better part of 20 years. I mean,
yeah. What was the Curlin Rags? Was that like 106?
It was even slower. I could be wrong. I believe this was the fastest Belmont since Point Given, which was okay. Was 01, 02, something like that. I mean,
I think
no, it was later than that.
I think 01 is right.
Point being, don't pun intended, that it was. I mean, it was an exceptional performance from the top two, and if you think they can sustain that. I mean, when was the last time we saw 3-year-olds this early earning figs that high? Forget about the fact that they came in the Belmont Stakes of all races.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It was 2001. I just saw a nice picture right out here. I'll give you a little tour. Right past that door, there's like all these beautiful paintings, Munnings-esque paintings of the old Haskell winners, and there's a great one of Point Given. I'll show you the rest of the room here while we're doing a little tour. That's, you can't see with the glare, but overlooking the paddock.
Yeah.
It's just this is incredible room. Very, very cool stuff. But yeah, I agree. We have a comment to that effect actually right here from Fan of Horse. I'm a curmudgeon, read the younger horses, and even I think this crop has talent. It's going to be fun to see how it pans out. This is a great time, folks. If you've got questions, whatever they are, if you want to tell us who's going to win these last 3 races, chime in. Again, part of the fun of this show is the live element, the idea that you get to be a part of the show and we get to hear your thoughts and opinions. We have somebody else cheering Italy. Does that mean they scored again, or are they just? Yes, they did score again. There we go. 2-0 in the 69th. I think we're feeling pretty good about that. No national disgrace on hand here.
And Pete, kind of to, not to belabor the point, but the idea of those were 2 of the better 3-year-olds. And I suppose you could say 2 of the best, but not far behind them, I would think anyway, if they progress, would be a Midnight Bourbon, a Mandaloon, Medina Spirit, regardless of all the things going on. I'm not going to sit here and say the Medina Spirit can't run. I think that would be an ignorant statement. All of a sudden, you've got a really good group, and we're totally not dismissing, but overlooking the fact that I thought in the grand scheme of things, I thought Rombauer ran just fine.
Yeah,
I thought Known Agenda, when you go back, and I thought Marshall Graham did a really good job breaking it down, the combination of Trackus and, ground loss and all that sort of stuff. Initially I was left really kind of, Known Agenda, maybe he didn't take that step forward that I was hoping he would. In hindsight, maybe he actually ran a better race than I was giving him credit for. I mean, if he's the 7th or 8th best 3-year-old that we have in this crop right now, it's a pretty darn good crop.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. Marshall's so worth a follow. Any horse racing fans, there's the James quote popping. I think AJ popped that up on the screen, but we'll take it. Marshall, well worth a follow on Twitter, at Truxton Stables. All manner of good stuff he throws up there, including that very interesting analysis. And I mean, we've never seen before the 1-2 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile being the 1-2 in the Belmont Stakes, or I don't think in any of our 3 Triple Crown races. So that was certainly something to see, and I just hope we get to see it play out the way we want to see it play out. Let's keep everybody healthy. Let's see. You mentioned Rombauer. My comment on him was I felt like from the unique vantage point I had, I was right down on the rail, maybe 3/16 pole. We were visiting. We made some new friends at a barbecue down there on the rail because Perrin really wanted a hot dog and I couldn't find one. So I went and tried to silver tongue my way to a hot dog for Perrin, and it actually worked. Super nice people. Thank you, Lamb and Tara, for that one, by the way. But yeah, so we could really got an incredible view. I also wanted her to be close to the horses, which she loved. And Rombauer was like super duper keyed up. It broke post, but not in the good way. Broke post in the putting my head up way. And I just think it might have been, 3 weeks after that big effort. I just don't think he was his best self, and he didn't run horribly at all. But I'm not saying he was going to be in the photo with those 3, but he's a few lengths better than that, I think. And I'm curious to see what he has for the remainder of the year. A form reversal from him, if he can keep his act together, we'll say, pre-races would be no surprise to me.
Purely from a selfish standpoint, I would like for the next, maybe before we get to the Breeders' Cup, I would like to see him back on grass, just to see, especially at the top level. So the Belmont Derby is, I think, the second week in July. I don't know if they'll do that. That's a lot of racing in a relatively short amount of time. But I think also there's value. I think back to Catholic Boy from a stallion standpoint. You're a dual grade 1 winner on dirt and turf. There's a lot to be said about that. As a son of, is he Candy Ride or Twirling Candy? One of the two. But I think I would love to see that and know that, dirt is always in your back pocket. He can handle that. I recognize most of the money is on dirt, and that's why typically you would go that route. But, and we haven't even brought up the likes of, highly motivated, who I think is going to thrive at shorter distances. Get him back to 7/8 of a mile. The H. Allen Jerkins at Saratoga, I think, is just, that to me is his race. No disrespect to Drain the Clock or Jackie's Warrior or any of those other one-turn horses. Highly motivated. If he shows up there, I think I said it earlier, and I know maybe it was a little bit premature, but now that I look back, I don't think it was. I think he's Practical Joke all over again.
Yeah, he's got every chance to thrive. Though, boy, one of my other big takeaways was how good Jackie's Warrior was, missing the kick and running the race that he did. He's a machine. That'd be a tough pick between me. I might have to go too deep in that one. Rombauer is by Twirling Candy. I agree with that idea of looking for a grade 1 on turf. It's just not going to be easy, given the timing for the Belmont Derby. They've got some decisions to make, and it'll be interesting. They've obviously been unusually campaigned. I don't mean that in a negative way at all, but it just, of all the ones who've had dirt success, he'd be the least surprising to see make a move like that. We've got a few other comments in I want to get to. What is the name of the room at Monmouth? This is just the library in the admin building. And yeah, it's just unfortunate. The track is right out that window. You just can't see it with the glare. We had a little rain shower before, but things look to be clearing up now. James asks about the Americans at Ascot next week and mentions the absolutely true fact that the weather is in our favor. Firm ground. So it looks like it's going to be, good to firm the water, but the Ward team's going to be tough. Twilight Gleaming is one that I like. Whoever he puts in the Queen Mary, that's the race that he's done the best in. And my general thing with Ward over there, even on the USA ground, if you look at the stats at the 5 furlong races versus longer, you want him in the 5 furlong races. That pure speed. And I think even with the better pedigrees that he has now than he did earlier on. It's not all speed, but I think it's an advantage. And I think given the success that Ward has had going 5, he's tipping his hand a little at the ones that he's going to race in the 5 furlong races. We'll have so much more on that. I'll give you Twilight Gleaming for now. Nakatomi, another I'm very interested in, but we're going to have a ton of coverage on the network. We're going to have Nick Luck on Monday. I'm going to get Kevin Blake somewhere, and then we're going to do shows for each day. We're going to do little 15, 20-minute shows for each of the 5 days of Ascot. So come back and we'll talk more about that. We have a question about pick and pray strategy. So we'll start with the remedial. Pick and pray is a contest like these where you have to put all your picks in ahead of the first race, as opposed to the live format where you can change them up. And the question is, with one entry, do you just try to choose the winners? And he asks for, for contest strategy lessons. How are we looking on these races, Matt? We got something coming up?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's put a pin in that. Let's circle back to it. I was going to just throw this out to you. We have 1 minute to Gulfstream. We have 4 to Santa Anita and 7 to Belmont. Do you want to just offer opinions on all 3 right now?
Let's do it. And we'll encourage other folks to do the same. Let us know what you think. But let's start with you, Matt. The first race coming up, where did you land?
Gulfstream, we got about a minute to post. They're going a 1-turn mile, beating $20,000 claimers. I don't think there's a ton of speed in here. I went to the 3 Brett's World, a maiden winner most recently at this 1-turn configuration, went right to the front. I think Jaramillo does the exact same thing in here. 5-2 to me is a very fair price. I wouldn't hold my breath on that. I think you probably come down a bit from there.
It's like you're reading my notes. Brett's World fits on numbers, should get the lead. Jaramillo on a speed horse next.
Let's go out to Santa Anita, where we've got, about 4 minutes to post. 7/8 of a mile, 1 turn on the main track, maiden 75s. I thought Silver Moon Road was interesting at 5-2 for Tim Yachtine coming in from Northern California. getting to the main track for the first time, but I think is a horse who, yeah, that most recent start came from a little bit farther off of it. I think can be a little bit closer if Tyler Bays is aggressive. The price is right to me too at 5-2. So the 2 Silver Moon Road for me.
Silver Moon Road in the mix, but I was going back and forth with a few of them in here. Little bit interested in the 6. Can't Stop This Man. First off the claim for D'Amato. Felt like there was kind of a little bit of a sneaky flow move up maybe coming out of that first race at Keeneland, and looked to me like one that might fit against the local California contingent and maybe a little bit of a strategic advantage drawn outside. But I could go about 4 ways in the Santa Anita race. I don't have a strong opinion.
Nice price for a D'Amato horse off the claim at 9-2 right now. And then Belmont Park, I think this is the race that I was most looking forward to out of the pick 6 sequence. The 1.25 mile race for the N1X runners on the grass. We've talked about it on the pod earlier today. I think we both like the 3 and the 9. We're looking at 7-1 and 9-1 right now. Shamrocket is 4-5 for Pletcher. Now, look, with the way Todd's gone today, I won't be surprised at all if he runs well. But my rationale stands that he's done his best with ballistic pace scenarios. I don't think he gets that. I'm still going to lean toward the 3 over the 9, but those would be the only 2 for me.
Double win bet for me, and I'll bet enough that it'll be hard for me to get out at the Monmouth card if this one doesn't work, and I'll just live with it if the 4 beats me. I mean, maybe to get the stake back, maybe a little 4 with 3-9 if I can get to the probables in time and if they're okay. But I think those are both good values on those runners, and UK Ireland people, I bet you can lock in better prices than that if you haven't already, and I would do that for sure. Does
the Chad at 6-1, is there any signal there that we're a little bit chilly?
Yeah, I mean, that ain't well. I want to say yes, and then I remember the 8-1 shot who we talked about last week, who won and kicked sand in my face in one of the early races. He has so many horses; it's hard for them to get like always priced up accordingly. But we're off at Gulfstream Park here. It looks like. I didn't get a great look from this head-on of how our runner's doing, but we'll probably get a much better idea here in a second when we switch to the pan.
Yeah, I didn't either, but I just picked up a comment down there. Nathan Kaczynski, there's no fee, for the podcast. Now, if you want In the Money Plus, there's a little bit of a fee, but just download wherever you're listening. Phone,
that's right.
Got it.
Most everything we do is free. I mean, 85%, and honestly, all the best stuff. It's not like it's some tout model that we have. We do have an In the Money Plus feed to give some extra actionable stuff as a way to get some contributors a little bit of money in their pocket and be able to give us a little bit of independence. That's just $10 a month or $100 for the year. If you want those, it basically comes out to an extra podcast a week and a bunch more cool written content. But yeah, 85-90% of what we do is free. InTheMoneyPodcast.com or over at iTunes. How do we feel about how this is shaking out? It looks like Brett's World has been overtaken by tonalism.
Yeah, Brett's World's about ready to drop anchor right now. And to be honest, I don't know that tonalism is home free just yet. Tone Feeling is breathing down his neck.
Yeah, Tone Feeling going best of all as they turn in. But as I say that, tonalism looks to be finding a little bit more, and the 4 going, and the 1 going up and down. Looks like this will be 4-1 to the hoop here at Gulfstream Park. Won't change the contest too much with the chalk on top, but maybe those could be meaningful points for people on the bubble, or those place points could be some jockeying for position in that race at Gulfstream Park.
We are off at Santa Anita. Okay. And it looks like the deuce broke on top. That is the horse I was mentioning, Silver Moon Road. But you've got 4 of them lined up across the track as they hit the main track at this point, coming out of the chute.
I don't mind that spot for the 6 one bit, but I want more pressure on the 2. I don't want the 2 to get loose, and it looks like I'm being obliged with Poseidon and Wrath. And I also wouldn't hate the 6 to be attending a little bit more as opposed to taking a hold, but we'll see. There's plenty of racing yet to go. If it ends up being fast, I'll love I'll love where we are with the
If
6.
there's that bunched, I have a hard time imagining they're going that quick.
Yeah, it's a fair point. That's another reason why I wouldn't hate to be where the horse in second right now. I guess that's the 4. Doesn't seem to be represented by Chicklet.
It's also very easy for me to say this now, but look at the ears on the 2. You look at the body language. He's just kind of cruising along out there.
Yeah, this one's done and dusted.
Whenever and people are always asking about, when I've talked about lead changes and ears and things like that, when they look like a rabbit and their ears are just straight up, they're doing that within themselves. Yeah, never mind what I always coin the pharaoh, when you got that one ear that's just kind of like flickering out there, having a good time.
Yeah,
always look for that sort of thing, because if you see them just straight up in the air, they're really not working all that hard. And no, it's not a brilliant opinion for a $7 horse, but that was about as easy as you're going to find when he made that kind of lead.
Nice winner. I mean, one much more like 2 to 5 than 5 to do. So good work on that. And yeah, I've always heard that the flipping around ears is like waiting for instructions. Like
I tell you what, that's one of those things where if I have a horse that I've backed, contest, money, whatever it may be, and I see that sort of thing, you start to, your heart skips a little bit of a beat, and you go, okay, there's still something left.
Yep.
Who knows how much is left, but there's still something there.
Start to get ready to get out of your chair. Maybe
exactly right.
Hit the table in the good way, and then of course the opposite, the ears pinned back.
Yes.
That's a horse giving maximum effort. That's you're at the end of the run and you're just trying to grind out that last mile. You don't have a whole lot left. You might be able to do it on your class, but don't expect a big re-rally from that point.
100%.
Getting into the gate here at Belmont. Hopefully this 3-9 double win bet will pay dividends for me. Then while we wait for the prices to go official, we will we'll maybe run through a comment or two if folks, anybody needs a shout out or whatever we got going on. But that's basically the program. We'll watch this race. We'll hopefully root our runners home, and from there a quick check of the leaderboard. Once it's all full, it's a couple of questions, and we'll be done and dusted for this week's edition of HorsePlayer Happy Hour. And we'll be back next Friday. I think we have one more off week planned. I'll put the whole schedule up very soon, but it's going to be a steady diet of Fridays. Tell your friends, folks. We want more people involved in this. I know theoretically it hurts your chances of winning the prizes, etc., but that's not what this is about. This is very much about creating this horse player community, being able to exchange ideas and have some fun and interact and raise money for charity critically. So that's what we want you to all be mini ambassadors for thoroughbred retirement and for these horses that give us so much pleasure. Play every week, play multiple entries, join us for the live stream, and encourage other people to do the same. How do you feel about our situation here with this half in 49-4?
It's not playing out the way that I thought it would. I thought we would be much closer. The 3 broke a little bit slowly. I thought Dance Mo was in a decent enough spot, but they were just content to take back. And he'll probably never hear this, but I would just love somehow the message to get to Eric Cancel. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Go right to the front on this 30-1 shot. I don't care if he stops just entirely. This is how he rode Tribhuvan this way. He rides a lot of horses aggressively. And on turf in New York, there's nothing wrong with that.
It could be a differential advantage. In fact, I think Dan Samo has some horse here as we're coming in. I think we just tipped out with this something to tell you as well. Chad Brown runner could be very tough. I got to think this Montauk Summer is going to come back, but I don't know. Our runners are flattening out a bit. Shamrock getting underway out in the middle of the track, a lot to do. But if he kicks in, he's going to win. And if it's not him, I think it's going to be this Chad Brown runner.
Yeah, I think the Pletcher horse has got the momentum right now, and he's going to just get his nose down, win by, let's call it a neck.
And the 2 ends up splitting and getting second. That could prove critical place points late. That's a photo, actually, I should say, between the 2 and the Klarovich runner on the inside. So we'll wait for the judge on that one, but I think it's going to be the horse in the middle, the Lapenta Silks. Looks like it got there. So we'll have to see. Oof, yeah, that wasn't so hot. That wasn't so hot from the one side backed.
No, I'm with you. I mean, and to be fair, I think the way that we drew it up, if I had told you that those 2 horses, the 3 and the 9, would be starting 7 off of a 50 half, I don't think either of us would have been nearly as excited. My hope was they would both be aggressively ridden, be forward, and they just weren't. And, unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. You take your lumps and you say, all right, well, I looked at that one wrong. But that is my takeaway is I again, he'll never hear this. Maybe he will. I don't know. Eric Cancel, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Be aggressive. Ride.
He's really, I mean, this winter at Aqueduct, he took a step forward and we're continuing to see it. I mean, that was a great ride by him and a great pick by you on Tribhuvan. Did you catch that exacta?
I had giant doubles alive throughout the day and I couldn't sniff one of them out. I ran second with him, with By My Standards, with Tiz and Magician after he lunged out of the gate and jumped 10 feet in the air. That was
painful.
That was my MO. That was the day. Running second with alive to quite a bit, and they ran well. They just couldn't get it done.
Let's get back to this pick and pray question. The idea of just trying to pick the winners in a pick and pray contest. Yeah. I mean, to me, it makes sense with the caveat that, it depends a little bit how many races are involved. If you get to a place where you're dealing with a bunch of like super open races where it's going to be hard to do that, I think you have to be willing to be flexible and where possible, reach for some prices. But to have a few tent pole spots where you take 5 to 2, shorties to put points on the board, I'm absolutely good with that. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement there. I think not only do you need to handicap each individual race, but I think you have to handicap the sequence to see the likelihood of, what spot is ripe for a price. If you think there's a race that, let's just call it volatile, where you think some things could happen, I think that's where you should be a little bit more ambitious and say, you know what, I'm going to take a shot. Even if it doesn't work out, maybe I run second at 8 or 10 to 1, and that place price will be enough to kind of vault me up the leaderboard. Whereas if you look, and I think especially so with some of these early feeders throughout the day, if you're trying to feed into one of the bigger events later on, if it looks relatively chalky, as unfortunately we see from time to time, shorter fields, seems very formful. I think that's when you sit there and you say, you know what, 6 to 5. We're not going to be, building any mansions off of 6 to 5, but you got to take what's given to you from time to time. And I think that's when you do that sort of thing.
Pete Rotundo shouting out your hair, which does look in fine form.
I had to do that this morning, and I had to. It was a double-edged sword where I've got my LPGA sweatshirt on.
I like that
with the hair. I wanted to have the hat on, but what are you going to do?
Quick question about Travel Column. What to do with her after 2 blah races? Little bit of time. Is there a cutback involved? Is it lesser company? What do you think?
Yeah, one turn. To me, in my opinion, inside isn't where you wanted to be on Belmont Stakes Day. It looked like to me for a bit she was ready to fire, and between her and Day out of the office, who I don't know why she was so close to the rail, for them to finish last and second to last. I'm basically just drawing a line through each of those performances. I think you'll get an improved effort next out. The bigger concern with a horse like Travel Column, I feel like she's just kind of plateaued, where I haven't seen she runs that high 80 by or that low 90. Sure, maybe it's good enough to grab a piece of things. I don't know if it's good enough necessarily to win a race like the Test or something else like that.
Chris Couples chimes in, thanking us. We thank you. We thank all of you for tuning in, for making the show so much fun to do. I'll show Nathan's last one, who mentioned something very similar to what you're saying. You also have to look at the prize pool, see how many seats are up for grabs, make your decision based on that, how many races in the contest, all that good stuff. Producer AJ, I think we probably have a final leaderboard. Let's roll through that and get out of here because I got about 10 minutes to the first race. Matt, you want to do the top 10 and I'll do the rest?
Sure. We'll go with the winner at $70.30, and I won't go through all the earnings. Derek Vogt, Bill Chenvert in second and third, Amy Warren in fourth, Bruce Meyer, who was part of that sort of leaderboard. He's going to pick up some vital points here. He's fifth, Wendy Long sixth, David Brownfield seventh, Robert Little eighth, Mark Wilgard in ninth, and Paul McClelland in 10th.
The things that stand out to me there, Bruce Meyer, who was, I believe, in second heading in. So That's a significant amount of points. And then Bill Chenvert will get the double points. That's 170. So boom, just like that, one fell swoop, you get in there. It just goes to show how you're not out of it. You could play 1 week and almost get to the leader, assuming you went for the 3 entries and got 1, 2, 3. So there's a lot of excitement. And again, we want to encourage everybody to check things out. So that's the top 10. They get the tour points. And then we had 7 others that I should read who move on? 6 others: Justin Kudla, Mark Henderson, William Bemmer, Mike Gillum, Pete Dressens, Truls Engebretsen, and that's it. That's 16. I can count to 16. So and then some folks will pick up some breakage as well after that. Any closing thought from you, Matt Bernier, before we wrap up this edition of HorsePlayer Happy Hour?
No, nice to get back to the Friday afternoons. We enjoyed the Thursdays, but I feel like Fridays, especially as we get into the summer, they become a little bit more sort of open, where folks can get involved and play along. And again, to your point, just pass it along. Let everybody know. Get the word out. Come and have some fun on a Friday afternoon. Play some races. Maybe win some prizes.
I love it. All right, some thank yous. Thank you, Matt Bernier, first and foremost. Thanks to everybody for viewing, especially those of you who left comments. Thanks to producer AJ, doing a fantastic job in the stead of producer Craig, who was on location today. Everybody over at the Breeders' Cup and horseplayers.com. Can't thank you enough. Loads of information about the Breeders' Cup, the Winning You're In races at breederscup.com, the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Go there, check it out. Go to horseplayers.com for a whole list of other ways to punch your ticket for the BCBC, as well as the National Horse Players Championship. That's going to do it. This show's been a co-production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. On our In the Money side, our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. One more thank you. How could I not thank my friends at Monmouth Park who let me sit in this gorgeous room, especially Brian Skirka. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.